Hi, my name's Dee, your Professor of Woo Woo, and welcome once more to Sunshine Tarot, and welcome to our look at the new moon in Pisces. My brain was telling me it was in Cancer there for a second, but no, new moon in Pisces for, oh my God, what month are we in? February, March. We're in March. As you can tell, I have every idea of when and where we are in time and space. I am joined with our resident astrologer, David Fischer. How are you doing, David?
I'm good, Dee. Thanks for asking. How have you been?
Good. Well, they're busy, chaotic, all sorts of crises popping off left, right, and centre. You know how life seems to be going for everybody at the moment. Now, a lot of the astrologers on the YouTube have been saying what a wonderful and hopeful new moon this is, and I'll agree with hopeful. I'm not so convinced by the wonderful because of that, it being so very close to Jupiter. But before I dive into my stuff, what do you make of this? Good, bad, or indifferent?
Well, first thoughts on it is that it's a productive new moon because you've got a lot of cardinal energy that can really propel any kind of practical things that you want to accomplish in your life, depending on where Capricorn falls in your chart, and we are going to dive more into it. But you also have the Pisces piece of it, which signals a restarting of the Jupiter cycle because it's going to be a conjunction with the Sun, restarting a new solar cycle for Jupiter, but also kind of with a new moon on it, you have this feeling of we are really experiencing this rebirth of Jupiter as a conscious awakening of that particular Pisces area of a chart. If it's your seventh house, for example, you're talking about intimate relationships or traveling matters or partnerships or anything that involves seventh house topics. If it's your midheaven, you're talking about career. If it's your fifth house, your children or your creativity or studies, even things that you identify with or that reinforce your idea of yourself. Health, if it's the first house, or health issues, if it's the sixth house. So all of those areas that we just mentioned are houses in your chart that are being affected by these transits. So you've got good potential from these planets that are helping each other out, that have the benefics in their support, like the new moon has Jupiter and Mars has Venus in Capricorn. But there are also a few issues that we were discussing prior to this video, even that we mentioned in passing, about, for instance, Uranus connecting with Mercury and Saturn. So we're going to dive into all of that in a minute. Let me just share the chart with all of you so you don't have to imagine all of that. Okay. So do you want to ask anything in particular first? Or like, do you want to go?
No. I'm going to save mine till a little bit later, since there's loads of stuff here I haven't told you about. So okay. I want to see how much we agree.
Okay. So I want to mention first one very particular thing of this chart, of this particular lunation cycle, is that we have the involvement of all the outer planets, the Transitarian planets, the Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And they are directly connected with several planets here. You can see that Uranus is connecting with Contrantisha to Mercury, as Dee pointed out to me prior to the show. You can see that Neptune is on the ascendant, or on the sign of the lunation. And we have a range of application of the moon that allows it to be connected to Neptune as well in this particular moment. And you have Pluto connecting with Mars directly and Venus in that conjunction that they're making, and that little dance of theirs that they started a few weeks ago and that they're going to continue to do for a while. Yes, quite a while. So better get used to it. I actually been saying it for a few lunations, how Venus and Mars have been really the main players of the development of whatever narrative we are having now in our lives, because whatever they're signifying is pulling the car of all the other topics in our lives right now. When you have such an unusual configuration in the sky, it kind of pulls the meaning, the main meaning, like the most unusual configuration you can have in a particular chart is going to be the main signifier of those events, probably, because it's the thing that stands out the most. You see, that's kind of how divination works in a way for people who don't really have much contact with it, very superficially. And in this chart, you see that peculiarity of the Venus-Mars conjunction still going on, but now connecting with a larger scale planet, a larger, a broader planet, let's put it like that, that contemplates more long-term dealings of society and how it influences your choices in the long term of your life. So we might be experiencing some shifts and turns in our Capricorn house because of Pluto, for instance, that we haven't seen in this level of, in this magnitude, since Pluto first ingressed into Capricorn in 2008. And we can look back into that time of our lives, those of us who have the age for it, as if I did. I was young as well, but I still remember that time. You can kind of look back and see that you're almost in as much of a uncertainty or as much as a kind of chaotic period, but still you now have a different perspective where you're more mature. You can see ahead, you can feel more secure about things than you first were in the period when Pluto first ingressed the sign. And the reason is Pluto is about to leave Capricorn in the next year or two, and that's a very short time for Pluto, so it's kind of wrapping up its themes. And now these peculiar configurations such as Venus Mars that happen on top of it are helping that larger narrative develop in our daily routines, in our conscious collective minds, as individuals, as well as, you know, a community, in your country, in your city, in your neighborhood, wherever your level of influence is, depending on who you are. So this is a very productive sort of thing. It allows you a larger perspective of your narrative in order for you to change it more consciously and aim your conscious, aware actions towards your goals, because Mars is exalted. So it's really giving you a purpose that you have thought through and that you're trying to bring up with some kind of stability because of Venus.
So to qualify that, because that refers to some of the notes that I've made, this greater clarity that's there, is it something that's just suddenly coming across us as in, oh, we understand? Or is it more of getting beaten over the head by something until we do something to change it?
Exactly the second option, because you have the problem is you're talking about Capricorn, and Capricorn is like a military camp. You're talking about the domain of the malefics. Both of them are dignified there. Saturn is domiciled and Mars is exalted in Capricorn. Mars is arguably stronger in Capricorn than Saturn is, even in sense of bringing up more of those significations in a way that matters to anyway, not diving too much into Capricorn right now, but as a military camp, you would focus on discipline most of all. The discipline, the hierarchy, all those things that are necessary for you to achieve a certain goal in a group that guarantees survival, you know, of the species as a whole. No matter the individual's will, the individual is lost in Saturnian ground, and you have to focus on the collective because it's where your resources come from, and you just have to respect a hierarchy in that sign. And right now, we are trying to establish some kind of order of priority in our lives. And so, yeah, I kind of lost my train of thought because I started getting into too much details in my head.
Don't worry, there's, you were talking about the structure that Capricorn and Pluto in Capricorn is offering us, and how Mars and Venus are reinvigorating our approach to whatever area of life your Capricorn house is.
Yes, it's reinvigorating because it's giving you the awareness that you can do, of what you can do for that, because Venus is giving you prosperity. Venus is trying to look at the best rituals, the best way to bring awareness around your issues. Like you're trying to attract people to help you with Venus there, or you're trying to attract enough money to start your project because it's a cardinal sign. You're trying to start something here. And that Mars in Capricorn just gives you the exact, precise feeling of what you should do in that area. What are the plans and opportunities that are rising that, even though they seem difficult, it's like that challenging, that's singing to you in a way that's like, I know that if I just put myself to this, I will get some fine results from it, because it is giving me that sense of security. But I know it's going to be tough. I know I'll need to be disciplined. That's the higher ground right now. That's looking at the dignified planets is going to give you the clue of where to extract the best kind of information, the truest kind of information, if you engage with that particular planetary influence. So if you do Martian rituals right now, you should be very well provided for. Because Mars is going to give you a good feedback of what you should do, even if it's kind of a negative situation. If you natally have a bad Mars, for instance, or you don't deal well with Martian energy, it can be a negative influence on your routine, disruptive even, but you can think of it like it's giving me the clue for what I should do next in this particular area. It's like if I have a fight with someone right now, it's exposing the truest content of what should be exposed about the situation so I can work best with it. You know, truth comes out in its truest form, even if it's a disruptive situation. And you can trust that.
So Mars, especially, it's in its exaltation degree.
Yes.
From the modern perspective, it's conjoining with its co-ruler of Scorpio. It's just come from that Venus-Mars conjunction, although technically we can call that last one a Mars-Venus conjunction because it was Mars that was overcoming Venus for a change, and that's not exactly common. It's normally the other way around. So yes. Mars not only should be listened to, much as we don't like the word should, Mars doesn't necessarily need to be listened to. Mars will be listened to because there is no escaping that influence. So having that whole Pluto thing in the mix, how's that, other than the obvious about current events, which I'm sure we will touch on later, how might Pluto being together with that exalted, doubly exalted Mars affect people on a more personal level?
Well, it will make you feel connected to that deeper sense of how the social experience influences your personal experience on Earth. It will make you connect the larger narrative in a way that's like, what have I been given value to in my life? What have I been really favoring in my life? What have I been giving my time to? Have I really tended to my needs in a way that if necessity struck, I would be, provided for, and things like that. All of that social scale narrative that really affects people personally, where those things are happening. Obviously, they lose their homes. That's Capricorn in its, most grim. You have people losing their homes. You have people dying. You have attacks. You have sieges. You have all of those things that we are experiencing in the planets right now, because as soon as Venus makes that last conjunction with Mars and it moves on to separate from him for a long time, it will be besieged by the malefics in Aquarius for a very long time, or I think will feel like a very long time. And that's basically not good for Venusian matters, which means diplomacy. We are talking about things such as diplomacy. We're talking about things such as justice. We are talking about things like women's rights, even in places that have been repressing them, such as we saw in Iran last year. We are seeing, more revolt. We saw women revolting, but we also saw more repression on top of that. We might see more of that in more places happening now. We are seeing people who are already marginalized in society. We're seeing them all being more marginalized still, and that being the picture that is brought to life with those kinds of configurations when you have both malefics battering Venus. Good news is Saturn is actually receiving Venus, so we should get a really good look at what's manifesting, and we will understand deeper deep societal issues in a way that's going to expose that to the young people that are going to be able to do something about it when they.
Just picking up on that point that you said about value earlier, value being associated with the Venus aspect of this particular trinity here. With Mars being doubly exalted, Mars +1, would it be fair to say that Mars is pointing out to us the things that we no longer need to put value in and to cut that value relationship, whereas this had meant a lot to me, but oh my God, it's meaningless now?
Yeah, I think that Venus retrograde kind of did the trick, but now Mars is giving us a repurposing of that. It's like after we prepare the ground, we now have to sow new seeds, and Mars is kind of sowing those new seeds. So Mars now in its full exaltation and taking Venus onto Aquarius before it leaves its exaltation, meeting Pluto, is going to make sure that the priorities are established. And if you have been following this transit throughout, you know what the priorities should be in your life right now. And you know that you have been conceding a little bit of your focus to things that you've been focusing too much on things that are minor details, but you've been aware of that. Like as soon as you're doing it, you kind of become aware that you're doing it, and you try to stop it. You try to reverse your course, and you try to reprioritize in order to create a new routine, a new narrative around that Capricorn house. Again, see the topics that are referring to that Capricorn house, and connect to that flux of thoughts that we are mentioning here.
So that's quite interesting, because he was mentioning about how under the retrograde, we've looked at what has value and what hasn't. Venus is still in shadow by mere minutes, but it is still in shadow here, while Mars is rearing out in front going, come on, people. It's almost like you've got the message now. Let's go. Would that be fair?
That would be fair. I think Mars and Venus are a very volatile? Yeah. Maybe not in Capricorn, but could be called volatile pair. When they're together, you have a will to manifest beauty and influence in the world around you that is overpowering. And it takes over you. You want to make a difference for yourself or for other people. If it's focused on other people, generally is more well-motivated. If it's focused on yourself, it can be also a good thing, depending on your relationship with these planets and your level of awareness about how they manifest in your life, especially negatively. But they do bring out the ugliness in our righteousness, in our self-righteousness in front of other people, because you're talking about planets that mean public relations, especially Mars. It's about things that I was listening to it, I think, in a Robert Schmidt lecture the other day. It's things that come out in public that aren't disgraceful for you. Right now that's exalted, so it shouldn't be anything particularly gnarly that comes out, but it should be even for your improvement. Like you have a tantrum in front of your friends and they're like, it's okay, man, you can have that kind of reaction. We are your friends. Just know that you're safe and you don't need to act out like that anymore. And you can then feel again that part of yourself that's more defensive, that had a Martian reaction and brought out some truth to your awareness under a new light, you know.
Yeah.
And your friends, Venus, are able to kind of cool you down and make you even more adaptable, you know, make you even more assertive in your way of relating to others, which is important. I think that's very available right now. So
go on. I think you was about to say the same thing as me.
You're going to talk about Pisces?
I was going to just move along a little bit and go into Mercury and Saturn.
I want to mention that after I talk about Pisces, because I think that I want to mention the good first. We are talking about Venus. Venus and Jupiter here in these signs where they are, you know, Venus has triplicity rulership in Capricorn and Earth signs. Doesn't have any particular indignity, let's say it like that. And it's being received by its exaltation lord, which is Mars. So it's not particularly, you know, beaten up or anything. The moon and the sun are in Pisces and benefic bounds, which are Jupiterian bounds, and you have Jupiter in 2 degrees away from the moon, so very engaged in this particular aspect. So it's a new moon conjunct Jupiter and sextile to Venus. It's a sextile not by degree, but still a sextile by sign. So there is a lot of fertile potential in this particular new moon. It's a new beginning that we've done in our lives, that we have gone through in our lives throughout the Venus retrograde cycle, that now comes into a head and we are able to see it from a new point of view, which is Jupiter. It's able to open up a whole new plethora of ideals around a particular narrative that you're inserted in right now, which ties back to what we were talking about on Mars, kind of relaxing a little bit with Venus and being able to burst out into flames, but in a controlled manner or in a safe environment for it. That's Capricorn, a cool ground for Mars to burst into flames. It's kind of a new weaponry test ground, you know, where it can do that, and then it can get sharper, it can get more effective, it can get more assertive and aware. The Pisces part of the chart is allowing you to open up your experience, you know, your narrative, to see the good in what's come, in what's entered your life, and to try and adapt without being so rigid, without thinking that the previous plan has to fit in perfectly with the narrative that you're trying to develop. It's like, yeah, you had a plan before you executed everything. Now that you've executed and you're trying to live the plan, you see that you have to adapt a thing or two. And that's also given for you right now as a possibility, because you can see the fertility of the moment for those 2 areas of your life and how they can help each other out. Now, talking about a little bit, Saturn in Aquarius with Mercury, that's where the difficulties lie a little bit more, because you have the other outer planets, which I always consider malefic, Neptune and Pluto, kind of bringing us to this over-idealism, perhaps, and over-identification, maybe, with international matters, let's put it like that, for people who are not as directly involved and that can not have that much influence over the events around them. They feel that they're too affected by it, obviously, because, you know, media influence and social influence, you kind of feel that it's affecting you directly. But that can kind of make you dissolve too much of your own self-narrative with the collectives. Yes. In a way that doesn't allow you to really focus on what's tangible to you. And that's also a form of escapism. Not that you're willingly doing that, but it's something that your body tells you, if you're an anxious person, that it's an emergency, even though you can do nothing about it. And even though it's not affecting you directly in your area, particularly now, if you're not one of those people in that particular affected area, I guess you all know what I'm talking about right now. the Ukrainian conflict, if it's not clear. But you have all of those themes going on around you, and it's necessary to remind ourselves constantly to keep a cool head. So that's the message from Mercury and Saturn, reminding us to have a cool head, because there is a lot of information going around right now. A lot of it is being manipulated by all sides. We don't know how. I am not able to tell you how. I'm not trying to raise any particular conspiracy theory right now. It's just really, we can't trust information sources anywhere, because it's a conflict of interests by people who control larger scales of society in a way that it's not available for us little people, you know? And that's talking from my own standpoint, if you know more than me, so good for you. But you have Mercury right now, Saturn, telling us that it's no good trying to define a particular narrative right now, because Mercury is about debate, and it's being received by Saturn, meaning that Saturn has to abide by Mercury's will, in a sense. You know, Mercury will require from Saturn a particular level of secrecy, a particular level of control over a narrative that is like, I need some kind of narrative to go this particular way, and I cannot allow these other factors to come into my narrative, because it's not a debate. It's a it's one side trying to overcome the other, trying to oppress another. This is what Saturn and Mercury look like. It's debate taken to an extreme. So that contrantitia with Uranus, which is something you mentioned earlier, is something that adds up to the uncertainty of the times, because it's adding in the havoc of the situation. It's like, no, you don't have any fertile ground here to build up your narrative, because every time you try to give an argument, there will have a social slice, you know, a part of society that is not happy with it, that is not being contemplated by it, and that is probably being oppressed by your decision right now, that's going to rise against it, and it's not going to allow the lie to happen. That's the nature of a square, naturally, also taken to another level with the contrantitia, because it's something secretive that's trying to be taken secretly. But Uranus and Mercury are not much about secrets, and especially when Mercury is visible in the sky, you can count on things to be very out in the open, even if it's a lot of information that is uncertain. You can expect it to be all out in the open. Which brings us back to the point that it can be both out in the open and secretive, because of, like you were saying, the misinformation, the agenda behind what particular parcel of information is being delivered to you and how is it packaged. So you're seeing this information in front of you and you're going, okay, well, this source says this. Why is that source saying that? What is their aim? What reaction do they want you to have? Who is paying for that source to say that? You know, where's the funding come from? What's the agenda here? So there's where I think you can see that contrantition come into play at the same time with this glaringly obvious, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. But the moment that you try and focus into those details, context disappears, and context disappears for agenda. Yeah, we are talking about Venus and Saturn here. They're rulers of Aquarius and Taurus. So you have the Venusian ground of Taurus receiving Uranus, being how can we build society? How can we agree as a society that we should all behave in a way to secure our cultural and your stable growth, you know, in the way that we agree we should grow. So we agree that we should grow in a capitalistic manner in the West. Does that make sense? It doesn't mean that it's perfect just because it's Venus. It just means that it's how society agrees. That's what I'm saying. But then comes Aquarius, which is the ignored side of it, kind of saying to Venus all the time in the 10th position from Taurus, look, you have to abide by the things that you ignore. And Venus is like, no, but I don't want to, because there's all these other things that I know that if I do right, I'll get to a determined result that is fertile, that's multiple, that will agree with everyone. And Saturn is saying there is no such thing. And you have to agree there is no such thing so you can move forward. And you have to abide by it.
And
make a limit
at the
around
same time, you've got Jupiter and Neptune going, la, 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 everything's wonderful and getting bigger.
Yes, and we should do everything we can in order to, incorporate into society in a very agreeable manner. Like we should all be friends and agree and no wars, but how do we do that really? Is there anyone trying to make plans for how we do that? How can you make plans for that? Do you recognize your place in society? Why don't you recognize your place in society? All those questions need to be raised right now. And before you honestly answer those base level questions as a private individual, you cannot possibly try to intervene in a larger narrative. Otherwise, you're just going to be another factionary, if that word exists.
And there's a natural inertia, which I will come on to later, where I can see it in the chart, which we bring in the 12th parts. But just in human nature, we don't want to ask those sort of questions. We don't want, there's a lot of people that do not want.
That's the Taurus. That's the Taurus. You just want to go with the flow and be comfortable and be accepted for who you are, how you look, how you act and interact. But you have Aquarius, which is also the flaws in the plan, the things that are uncomfortable in your personality and that you have to self-limit or self-regulate and put limits around to understand how people might react and build some barriers around it so you can keep that side of you kind of safe from societal gaze so you don't get excluded. And that's the hurt from Aquarius.
I love the fact that you say that the Saturn and Mercury is what's bringing this up. Mercury is on the very midpoint between the new moon and Mars. So it's on quite a few things. It's asking us also what we are finding sacred, because it is on the let me just check my notes. It is on the moon Vesta. That's what I was going to say. I'm getting blinded by details like you were earlier with thoughts. It's on the new moon and Vesta midpoint as well. It is, and that's the closest one. There is 2 minutes between Mercury and the moon Vesta midpoint. There's 30 minutes between new moon and Venus, and then 41 minutes with the moon and Mars. So Mercury,
clearly they are all conjunct, so they should be.
He's trying to, there's this side, there's this side. There's that Gemini.
And interestingly,
pushed.
I want to refer to Peter's talk. I want to refer to Peter's talk because Peter Young, our friend, has this talk on the ascendant that he just gave at Nightlight Astrology that will give you this insight into Mercury's nature that is amazing in a way that I haven't seen anyone but Robert Schmidt do up until this talk. So you should check out his channel. Is Premier État Astrology. Is that it?
I think so, yeah.
So
I'll put the link for it down below anyway afterwards.
Yeah, so you have Mercury with the nature of logos. If you know a little bit of your philosophy, and mind you, I'm very basic on my studies of philosophy, so don't feel bad if you don't. Logos is this particular character that will embody and will show you through vision and sound. It will speak to you, it will show you images, but it will not give you direct content necessarily. It will give you the message by making you, that's true logos anyway. Mercury in a lower level is also messaging, but in a higher conscious level is more of trying to guide you towards an awareness through your own consciousness, where you have an experience, a true experience of a thing through the guidance of sound and image. Very broadly speaking, and I'm doing a very lousy job of explaining that. But being in midpoints, like it will, I think, do its job very well. Like it will guide us through this experience of, oh, not here, not there, because that Saturn ground, it's always mistaking things for what they're not. That's Saturnian ground, that's Aquarius, that's conjunction to Saturn, and it's always barriers. But Mercury is good at that. It's like, no, can't do that, can't do that, can't do that. But I see all these other options, and certainly from circling around it, you come to a conclusion and you see that you are doing it already without having ever intended in the first place to achieve it, because you trusted the process and you just kept going, you just kept in motion, and you just kept moving according to the highest truth in your spirit, to what you truly thought was going to be good for you, to what you felt was good for you, and you listened to your intuition using your mercurial tools, in other words.
Yeah.
It will help you bridge all these circumstances.
What is interesting as well, and we'll see it when we put my chart out, because obviously I use a few more points than you. It's, have I got this right? It's septile Chiron, between 0 and 1 degrees septile. So it's not just showing us all these things. There's I almost feel like Mercury is going, does it hurt here? Does it hurt here? Does it hurt here? Does it hurt here? You know, and it's going to keep poking you until it points out where that hurt is, so that you can then hopefully not react because of it, but do something about it.
Yes, yes. It's
Right.
Saturn works that way. It's the slowest moving planet, and it's affecting the Aquarius house of your chart for a long time. It's still going to affect it for a year and a half, I think, until it moves into Pisces, and then my Saturn return starts. But then you have the Saturn going through its own house. Again, it's able to give you more awareness of where your flaws in the plan generally happen, and where your awareness about who you are, your self-determinacy, are kind of letting you down. And Saturn does that in order for you to have a stronger narrative, in order for you to have a truly cohesive understanding of why you are where you are. And so you can derive from that more strength of character.
I mean, overall, I think that the summation of this chart is it's a positive chart in the long term. But I wouldn't necessarily say in the short term.
It's definitely in the long term because you have Saturn and Mercury, but oh, hang on, I have to plug my computer. Just a second. So it's not exactly Saturn and Mercury. That is just, they are the only ones playing out, or the heaviest elements in this chart. They're definitely very influential, but I mean, Jupiter is in its own sign as well, and it's in a mutable sign, which talks about ending things and beginning new things that are short-lived. So it's a transitory kind of period indicated there. And you have that, which is where the new moon is happening. And you have the cardinal being activated by Venus and Mars, which again are kind of volatile and provide you with fertile ground and the oomph and the fertileness to start new things. But I think that it's more of the feeling of newness and being through this new awareness that you're stepping into. You're being aware now that you're not necessarily establishing who you are in the long term right now. You're just establishing what you're going to do for the next few months, but you're kind of getting a new idea of who you are. You're like, oh, I see this Ace of Cups moment. I feel myself in a different way now. And I am experiencing things in a new way. So it's kind of a transitory period that allows you to relax and thus be more fertile to new you that is going to come out of this. And that has to do with the longer narrative of Saturn trying to self-determine and to see itself without past hurts.
And it allows you, but that just reminded me, because this is the new moon's in the 9 of Cups decan. So the 9 of Cups is very much wish fulfillment, but be careful what you wish for. So there's this whittling down of, let's have a look at your wishes. Yeah, does that one work? Yeah, let's get rid of that one. Let's have a look at this one. Have you ever thought about putting more weight on this one? This one looks better. And being able to, literally, I feel like someone like whittling a piece of wood just to get down to the best wish, the sharpest point. Would that make sense?
It would. It would. Really would. Would.
Well, yeah. Is there anything more on this version of the chart, or shall we swap to?
We can swap, yeah.
Right, let me share my screen onto, no, that's totally the wrong button. Right, I apologize for my colors, everybody. I've got no idea how to get rid of them. Right.
I'm just going to get a cup of water I'm just going to get a quick cup of water.
Okay.
I forgot to bring one.
Now, what I find particularly fascinating about the whole chart, it's almost like there's three teams. I mean, I was looking at it on a level of, well, of course I would, like a superhero crossover. You've got the three teams. You've got the Capricorn team. You've got Mercury and Saturn. So there's your Batman and Robin. And then you have the Moon, Jupiter, Sun, and to a certain extent, Neptune. Now, the new moon, the way I'm seeing it, is uncomfortable with what it is wanting to do, or that it is being forced into action, because you will notice that it is actually sesquiquadrate, so a square and a half, to its own 12th part. So there's that sense of irritation. There's that sense of, yeah, I've got to move here, but I don't really want to, because as we know, squares and therefore all the harmonics from the squares are irritating and impelling movement. Some difficulty there. Now, it's interesting that if we're looking at the sun and the moon, and I really like this in the light of current events, in the form of the new moon, the moon is stronger than the sun here, because the moon is ruling the sun's 12th part and is ruling its own 12th part. So you've got that more emphasis on the people than the leader. And that is something that gives me hope, even though this whole emphasis is, like I'm saying, it's irritating. Now, it's also, again, using a modern aspect, the new moon is irritated also by Pluto and Mars, because it's the other way around, it's semi-octile, so an 8th harmonic. But again, there's that sense of irritation going on. And as I say, it looks like Mercury is busy stirring the pot. Being on all of those midpoints, it's having connection to everything, and having that septile to Chiron, it is saying, does it hurt here? Does it hurt here? Does it hurt here? Now, the new moon is related to Chiron in a semi-sextile, so they are operating vaguely in harmony, not in that they can see each other, they can't, but it's like tapping your foot to the music you can hear coming through the walls from next door, or at least that basic rhythm that you can hear, even though you can't hear all the higher frequency sounds. The 12th part of the new moon is biseptile Chiron. The new moon itself is biquintile, the Chiron 12th part, and the sun is contraparallel Chiron. So what I'm getting from that is that there's lots of creative ideas in how to reject a current identity. What I would also say is not all of those ideas are good ones, because there's, again, what we were saying with Mercury and the agendas behind information and misinformation that is put in front of you. There's, if you are making some form of move of, I am not accepting this as part of my life anymore, do some form of divination. Do some form of, just check if spirit, to use a nice woo-woo term, but hey, Professor of Woo-Woo, just check that spirit agrees with you, because you're going to be impelled in all sorts of directions, especially with Mercury pinging that, hang on a minute, what do you feel is sacred, being on that moon Vesta midpoint? Whereas Pluto, the Pluto team is holding everything up going, this might be sacred, this might be sacred, and smashing a few things along the way. There's some interesting angelic and demonic relationships going on with, hopefully you won't see my notes suddenly appear on the screen. We have Mars, as much as Mars is in its own exalted degree, it also is related to its own 12th part by the goetic spirit Vapula. Mars is in Vapula's rulership, and the 12th part is in Vapula's decan. Now, Vapula is very much about handicrafts, tools, learning the right skills, getting into the fine detail by having the right screwdriver, the right spanner, the right wrench, the right size nails, screws, nuts, bolts, the right tool for the job. And if you haven't got that tool, Vapula is the one who will show you what it is that you need and how to make it. And that, I think, is really interesting going on here. There's also, as I said, there's 3 teams going on first glance, focusing on that Mercury Saturn that we've already discussed to quite some length, and we've focused on the team of Pluto, Mars, Venus. Venus, however, is parallel Mercury and Saturn. It's almost like it's a sleeper agent in Pluto's court on this chart. And it also has a relationship to the, yes, Venus is trying to impel the moon in a correct, and I mean correct in a full-on religious dogma type way, because is Venus 12th part is tredocile, the moon. Tredocile is 108 degrees. And again, it's the other half of a quintile out of a, what do you call half a circle? A semicircle. So there's, it's just as much as the quintile is the space where the creativity happens, the tredocile is the bit where that creativity is impelled, is necessitated by the will of God, the divine, universe, whatever. Now, the new moon in and of itself, again, by this, is annoyed with the Saturn-Uranus square and with Mercury and Saturn. The new moon is semi-octile Mercury and Saturn, and there's a loose opposition to, now let me see, I haven't written it down correctly in my notes, but it says loose opposition to the 12th parts. So the new moon is here, and the 12th parts of the Mercury Saturn are directly opposite. Now, they're also, it's a loose opposition, but if you want to go to exact degree, it is more of a triseptile. There's almost, I had this image in my mind of, not in a Harry Potter way, more in a Doctor Strange way, competing mages. You know, there's, I'll try my bit of hocus pocus, oh, well, I can do better than that, my bit. You know, it's not that they're fighting each other, but they are competing against. They are both trying to outdo one another. But I have to keep coming back to that idea of the moon being stronger and the people being stronger, when the north node is supporting the new moon, is by quintile, by being conjunct its the new moon's 12th part, and by being ruled over by Citri, who again, one's in Citri's rulership, the other's in Citri's decan. Now, Citri is very much a spirit about generating love. And that I really like. So there's this invitation to try and act in that loving fashion. As I said, Venus is trying to impel the moon or the people into acting in the correct fashion. And most holy type people would say love is the correct fashion. So there's this underlying message of this impelling towards a sort of a love message, while Mars and Pluto are creating all the havoc that they are. Venus is going, great, you go and cause your havoc, do a bit over there. You know, and there's this, if you do it there, then they'll react this way. It's almost like Venus is a bit of a, she's had plenty of time to think about it. She's still in shadow. She's just about to step out. And so she's steering just as much as Mercury is steering. I'm seeing Pluto, Venus, and Mercury as the prime movers on this chart, because another thing that gives me hope, Pluto is in antition to its own 12th part. Now, Pluto helps bring up secrets and treasures and bring all this revelation, but there's secrets beneath secrets here, just like we was talking with Mercury about you have this information, but who's paid for it, whose agenda is it being working on. Pluto is sat there probably quite well aware and probably working with Venus and quite well aware of what Venus and Mercury are doing, is going, you know, they're doing the whole Ming the Merciless, or that guy with the cat from Austin Powers. Yeah. Whereas I will reveal these secrets for another secret reason. So I honestly feel that there are quite some surprises coming our way. And once we get this first level of revelation of whatever it is, that's not it. That's not the end. That is a level of revelation that is operating, it's probably true, but also operating to an agenda. But that level of revelation leads us to yet another one. We have Chiron stimulating Lilith by the angel Sitael, who I certainly haven't got the details written about. But what is really interesting with Mercury, Mercury is ruled by degree by the angel Vazaria, who is all about clemency and equilibrium. Mercury can only, in the way I look at it with the angels, Mercury could really only be acting in the long term to create and gather that equilibrium. He is aiming for that clemency in an equilibrium by creating loads and loads of discord and, you know, the hoo-ha and to and fro of information in the meantime, because it's like when you suddenly get rocked on a bit, when you're on a boat and a big wave hits and you're suddenly like trying to gain your footing. And that's exactly what he's doing, making sure you have a better sense of balance. I think that's everything that I have to say about what I'm seeing in the chart with the 12 parts and the angels and demons. What do you think, David? Because you've always given me really good input on these 12 parts.
I really love what you were saying about Mercury and helping you maintain your balance or get a better understanding of balance rather than improving it. Yeah, that's exactly what that dynamic with Saturn is bringing up. And you can see that engaging with the mercurial activity in that particular configuration could be more beneficial because Mercury rules the 12 parts, which could be, the intentions behind what's being manifested, the divine intention, if I can call it that, for if you know a bit of what I mean by divine, higher thought, or things that are more conscious, more awareness, more of the higher realms, for those of you who understand that kind of stuff. And
it's quite ironic, because in a way, with the way I was looking at it, Jupiter's now irrelevant, because it's just going on making everything else bigger, and everybody is taking advantage of this.
Yeah, it's just that it's happening in Jupiter, in a Jupiterian sign, in the manifestation level, which means it's going to affect those particular Piscean significations. They're going to come out the truest, as you can say. Like, if you want to look at the Pisces part of your chart, it's going to be giving you a lot of interesting relationships, or interesting, because Jupiter represents friends, or it could be representing even children, if you have those in your life. For some reason, you're a teacher, you're a tutor, you're a parent, or you're trying to go for fertility because you want to have children. This period is particularly fertile for those particular endeavors, for instance, and it can help a lot. So you could go for a new kind of technology that allows you to kind of overcome a limitation in regards to Jupiterian matters, which is involving children, for instance. Yeah, I think all of that is happening. Jupiter is not irrelevant. It's being the channel through which a lot is being manifested to our consciousness. So it's not irrelevant, but yeah, it's the thing that is going to be the easiest to deal with, I would argue, and that we don't have to think much about, because it's just going to be given in a good manner.
I want to say about Chiron again. There was one thing that I missed, that Chiron is on the Vesta Lilith midpoint as well. So there's this sense of whatever the wound is making you stand up for that which you feel sacred, which, when coupled with the fact that if you were looking at the new moon as the sun and the moon being the stronger of the two, I think that there's an element of beauty there. Even though Lilith can be shadow and Lilith can be fear, Lilith can also be that strive for independence, because I will, I'm as mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. But Sitael, which is ruling that relationship between Chiron and Lilith that I mentioned, is a seraph invoked to overcome adversity. He is responsible, or she is responsible for miracle making and the construction of universe and worlds. You'll remember that one because Sitael's had quite a role to play before in our lunation videos. And with that Mars heading out of Venus's shadow and like putting, Venus has shown you the way, now let's do it. That energy of Sitael making you want to take that independence and rebuild something new with acknowledgement of the wound that's there, with the force of the people being irritated enough into taking action and into making that new thing, which is why I rather feel that the new moon itself is pretty miserable. It is pretty irritated, depressed, but the new moon chart that it's in is offering so much longer term hope. It's just that you could say there's that sense of, oh God, I've got to deal with this now. To which all the planets are saying, yes, you really, really do have to deal with this now. And this, therefore, it is opening up something potentially wonderful, as long as when you are changing your identity, you are changing what you accept as part of your world, you are making sure that spirit agrees. that you are not being hoodwinked somehow, that you are not allowing Mercury to be the trickster, but that you are allowing him to be the being that helps you travel across worlds into a new world. Do you have anything to add on the chart, or shall I stop sharing?
No, you can stop sharing. I think we've covered a lot.
I think we've covered there are some interesting things that I got about that. I mean, we'll be remiss if we didn't name what was going on in the world by name. Now, you and I have been looking at two different charts for Ukraine, haven't we? So you've gone on the chart of the Declaration of Independence, and I've gone on the chart of the legal recognition of independence from the World Horoscopes book. And that Chiron that I was on about is right on Ukraine's recognition midheaven. That's quite significant. And also Mars and Pluto are on the same recognition charts, is on its progressed Lilith. So there's echoes again of that story that we were seeing in the new moon. But that Mercury Lilith thing is really interesting. Jupiter's 12th part is on Putin's natal Lilith and midheaven. And that Mercury Saturn conjunction is on Putin's progressed Mars. So there's a lot of energy. It's a horrible situation that is going on. Uranus is on his progressed Jupiter as well at the moment. It's a horrible, horrible situation. But it does feel like, with all of these messages in the charts, that it was going to happen. It is part of the storyline that the world has to face to get from, we know where A is, we don't know where B is, but this is one of the steps of getting to B. Now, I think it's up to us whether B is something good or something terrifying. Have you got anything that you draw from the Ukraine chart? Because you mentioned something yesterday from your Ukraine chart.
We were actually just talking about a little bit about it the other day, and I don't have much to add to it, except I was using the Declaration of Independence of Ukraine, which apparently was a Capricorn rising chart. I don't remember much about it, but I remember that the Venus-Mars conjunction has been going on, and the last one where Mars conjoined Venus was in the degree of the ascendant for Ukraine. So you have that cycle of them, which is tied into the eclipse cycle, affecting how they their borders, even their limitations, which is the first house of the country. It's defining its borders, it's defining its political limitations.
There was one thing I did want to get to, just on the basis of all of that, and especially I promised that I wouldn't rant before the before the show, but I know I got a bit excited going into the angels and the 12th parts. But the Sabian symbol for the moon, let me just bring that up. I've just gone straight past it. Yes, I've definitely gone straight past it. It was the bit about the ancient sword. Now, an ancient sword used in many battles is displayed in a museum. Rather like a wand, the sword directs our attitude towards one and only one thing, and thus concentrates the will. There is no greater tool or weapon for the spiritual aspirant than the power of will. You would say the same for a magician. It sharpens the mind and impassions the thrust of projection forward. So will is often symbolized by a sword. Those whose path has shown remarkable determination to overcome obstacles develop an appropriate reputation and stand as an example of courage for others to emulate. And I think that statement in and of itself can be left hanging there because we can. Okay, well, his Mercury obviously didn't want us to reveal all of his secret plans. We've just been cut off from the internet twice, and we had difficulty even getting connected earlier today. So David, you were just telling me something before we got cut off about Venus stimulating everything through irritation.
Yes, actually, you were saying that with the 12th part bit that you were doing earlier, and I just wanted to tie back to it, just saying that Venus 12th part being in Scorpio as well, which is its sign of detriment and exile, will give a nature to Venusian manifestations that is like, it had kind of the not wrong intention, especially because Mars is there as well, kind of giving it its power. But Venus is kind of doing Venusian things through Martian methods, which is not ideal. So if you want to keep harmony, why would you incite discord? That doesn't make sense. But there are people that we know whose motivation doesn't align with their attitude, really. They want to bring harmony, but they keep pointing out the bad things. They keep bringing out it in a harsh way. Those are Venusian people who don't have much of a well-dignified Venus. Now, in this case, I was comparing it also to Aphrodite, who is the goddess of love, the Greek goddess of love, which is correspondent to Venus in this case. And it would be like Aphrodite to keep a natural order of beauty and a natural order, quote unquote, natural order of harmony. And the status of society also, in society, we were talking about Taurus earlier and how it tries to keep up appearances because it's what been working all along, and it's what everybody agrees on. But wait, not everybody. I don't care. I want to keep the harmony on, that can be Venus, and that comes out when Venus is in detriment. So that's Aphrodite kind of cursing women for being more beautiful or claiming to be more beautiful than her. So to disrupt and show that if you've overemphasized the beauty of things and the idealistic, the side of Venus that can kind of engage and dilute your instincts and your desires. And can elude your desires and your instincts, and inebriate your senses in a way. And they can make you think that reality is just appeasing that sense of beauty. And when actually you have a higher part of your spirit, which Venus is a part of, but she can easily become the other side of it, the shadow side of it, that keeps you stuck at that particular level. And you think you're pious, you think you're this very evolved individual if you have a very strong Venus. But then sometimes if you're having problems with it, you kind of face that other side of you that is overly controlling when Venus is in detriment, and it's the Lord of the Year, for instance, because it's not so well dignified, and that controlling side of you kind of comes out. And this is what's happening now. So ties into the example that I gave earlier about friends giving you the the know-how to what you've been dealing with around things, the fights with your friends especially.
Which also brings us back to that point of check with spirit first before you're taking any major identity changing actions. Not that identity changing actions are not demanded by this sky, they really are, but just make sure you're doing the right one. And on that
and make sure also you take responsibility for your choices later on.
So before we get cut off again, now that we've revealed Pluto's secret plan, Venus's secret plan, and Mercury's secret plan, is what are you up to, David, and where can people find you?
Well, I am still up to the same things. I have tutoring sessions to offer to those who want to deepen their practice of astrology, especially in applying predictive techniques and want to know more of the Hellenistic style. how to interpret those particular, parts of astrology, I can offer you assistance. And I also offer private readings. So I offer inceptional astrology, which is electional astrology. I offer also horary astrology. I offer also natal readings, solar returns, predictions. I also do tarot. So have lots of offerings that you can find on my website. And also you can reach me through my pages on Facebook and Instagram. And how about you, Dee? Are you up to anything new?
Obviously, you can approach me for tarot readings. I know I've been a little remiss with, I've not had the opportunity to film as many zodiac readings as I'd hoped this month. I must admit, last week, it was the world situation. I honestly, I was going to sit and film one day, and then the invasion happened. I was like, what on earth is the point of doing zodiac readings when this is going on in the world? However, hopefully I will get an opportunity to film some more shortly. So you can approach me for a personal reading. 3-deck or 6-deck readings is what I offer. There's examples of them on the YouTube page. But I am also working on a course. Now, you'll have seen me mention throughout a lot of these new moon videos, I touch upon angels and demons and their rulerships within the zodiac and how that's affecting aspects that are in the sky, and sometimes how it's affecting a relationship with two planets that are not making a classical or even a modern aspect, but that undertone is still there by degree or by decan or by quinance, 5-degree arcs of angelic or goetic rulership. I will be doing a course later this year through bloodstone.info from Travis's site. So I'm pulling all the material together for that. I have, I've opened a Patreon, but I haven't actually launched it yet. So if you want to see more about the angels and demons, because there's so much to talk about when I'm talking about it with David. And David, as I hold my hand up and I say, I am not yet an astrologer, I have so much to learn. But the angels and demons is my thing. So if you want to see me create videos purely where you've got to put up with me and miss half the main astrology like what David provides for us, let me know. I may be doing that on my Patreon, or I may even do a sample 1 or 2 on the YouTubes. But in the meantime, stay posted. This course on angels and demons within the zodiac will be coming up hopefully August, although I have really got to pull my finger out on writing the course materials. Other than that, good luck, everybody. Stay safe. Look after those that you love. There's not much more to say about that, is there? Just stay safe, everyone. And before you do anything rash, do your own divination, do your own, does this feel right? Am I being hoodwinked? Does spirit think this is a good idea to do? And I think that's the one lesson, because this new moon can lead us to a better place. Spirit can lead us to a better place if we let it, and if we don't get hoodwinked. And there's a lot of hoodwinking out there. So on that cheerful note, have a great couple of weeks. We will see you again for the new moon. Thank you so much, David. Do you have any final message to add?
No, just have a good new moon, everyone, and we'll see you again for the full moon.
Right.
I suppose.
See you all later. Cheers.